Okay, hello and welcome everybody. Thank you for attending Stanford Healthcare Nurse Residency Program Application Preparation Webinar. This webinar will be recorded, so we'll be posting it on our YouTube page within the next 24 hours. I ask that you please mute yourself during the presentation. We do have a Q&A session that will be following the presentation, so please hold all questions until the portion of that session. Okay, so to get started, I'm Leticia Cortez. I am a nurse residency program, part of the nurse residency program team, along with Carrie Zoss and Christy Norris, who's on the call as well. We are excited to have three current nurse residents join this session, so they'll be able to share their experience in the application process and in the nurse residency program. So they'll be joining us at the end of the session. So we have Jackie Bassa, who's a clinical nurse on L5, which is our neurology unit. We have Victoria Tesfaye, who's a clinical nurse on our inpatient psychiatry unit. And we have Shanae Cordier, who is a clinical nurse on our C2, which is medicine unit. We are also pleased to have our HR partner. We have Carly Dye. She's a senior talent strategist, and she's going to be joining us if we have any HR related questions. She'll be with us in the Q&A session as well. So just some objectives that we have for this webinar. So by the end of this webinar, you, the participant, will be able to understand the Stanford Healthcare application process and expectations for prospective applicants. You'll also be able to describe the application requirements with a heightened understanding on cover letter and resume writing. And then you'll be able to understand the Stanford Healthcare Nurse Residency Program's cohort timeline, clinical placement, and the departments that are hiring, the nurse residency program participation, and also our curriculum. So we're so excited that everybody's here today and interested in our nurse residency program. We just thought this would be a great opportunity to share a little bit about who we are as far as an organization. So the statements are here taken from our careers website. So here at Stanford Healthcare, we've been a home for passionate achievers across every discipline at every level. Our people have advanced medicine in ways few thought were possible. In our more than 160-year history, we have seen many firsts. We will continue in our relentless pursuit of excellence, creating life-changing advancements for people all over the world. You are the people behind the medicine, the individuals who deliver life-giving hope as you continue to move Stanford Healthcare forward. So one breakthrough at a time. It's a journey worth celebrating, and you're invited to share. So we're really happy that everyone is here and interested in becoming part of the team here at Stanford. So again, I'm sorry, I skipped that. So just a little bit more expansion on that. We are a large academic medical center. We have more than 300 facilities throughout the Bay Area. We're the only level 1 trauma center between San Francisco and San Jose. At Stanford Healthcare, we have over 15,000 employees, 3,600 of them being clinical nurses. The Palo Alto campus alone has 605 licensed beds. 101 of those are ICU beds with 53 operating rooms as well. So just to get a sense of the footprint, our 500P, which is our Palo Alto campus, is over 824,000 square feet. We have more than 450 flight transports annually. We have about over 72,000 adult emergency room visits per year. And we also have over 2 million outpatient visits per year as well. So just with that all being said, in short, we are a large, high acuity specialty academic medical center. So we'd love to give you some more information about our nurse residency program. So at Stanford Healthcare, our nurse residency program is a nationally accredited transition to practice program through the American Nurses Credentialing Center. So that's ANCC. ANCC sets the global standard for residency program that transitions registered nurses into new practice settings. So that would be an advanced beginner, a new graduate nurse, into the clinical nurse role. Our program is thoughtfully designed and for highly motivated, determined, and compassionate new nurse graduates. The overarching goal is to develop competent, compassionate, and committed clinical nurses who make a positive impact in the lives of our patients. And here's some pictures of our great nurse residents that we have. So part of how we meet our goal of developing these competent, compassionate, and committed clinical nurses is with our curriculum. So we use Vizient's nurse residency curriculum. Nurse residency Vizient Nurse Residency curriculum was developed in partnership with academic medical centers and the American ANCC to support new graduates in this transition to practice. So our program isn't an extension of nursing school, meaning we don't reteach nursing school. We don't reteach the skills that you've developed in nursing school. We take all of your background, your knowledge, your skills, your experience, and we build upon them. And we teach you how to apply all of this into the care setting. The program integrates the 3 principles of leadership, patient outcomes, and professional role. So within our program, when we are creating content or we're teaching or we're going over some sessions on leadership, we will have things about conflict resolution, patient care coordination, how to communicate in the professional clinical environment, how to manage your resources. And with patient outcomes, we're always talking about how to manage the ever-changing patient condition, how do we integrate our teaching to patients and their families, how do we manage pain. Pain is different for everybody, and what are some strategies and what are the components to improve our patient outcomes. And we also talk about infection prevention, and these are just some samples of what we go over. For professional role, we talk a lot about stress management and self-care. We really pride ourselves as a program into really providing the tools for our nurse residents to recognize how stress manifests. It's important to recognize that, and it's also important to provide self-care, especially with all that's going on in healthcare, and taking time to have that balance of work and life and know how to nourish yourself. Self-care is different for everybody. So we really have taken an emphasis on that for our nurse residents. We will also go end of life. Sometimes in this profession, as a new nurse, this may be the first time you've been encountered an end of life situation or scenario. They're not all straight forward. Sometimes there's a lot of elements to the end of life for patients. So we cover those topics. We have evidence-based practice element to our program, which we'll go over shortly. And then we also love to go over professional development at the end of our program. We love to see how we can help develop and grow our nurse residents. Okay, so let's talk about some ways of how we do all of this work. So our program structure, we consist of 4 buckets, you would say, or 4 elements. We have first our clinical orientation. So this is, our time. We have over 300 hours of dedicated time with a preceptor. The preceptor is trained to be able to orient a new nurse. So, it's a different way of orienting or onboarding a experienced nurse. This is time that they have been trained to work with new nurse residents. They use the TSAM model for precepting. So it's progressive and incremental in your skill acquisition. And the way you progress through your orientation is through competency mastering the competencies that are laid out for you, the specific unit that you're on. The length of orientation is dependent on specialty areas. And really with whatever area that you're in, the goal is to have a safe transition to independent practice. To kind of partner up with that orientation time, we have collaborative check-ins that go beyond orientation and that occur at specific times throughout the 12-month residency program. So it includes a supportive team part of these check-ins. So with the nurse resident, we have a preceptor, the management team, someone part of the education team, and then a member of the residency program. In these check-ins, we celebrate successes, we identify challenges, and we develop action plans to support growth and progression. So aside from the clinical orientation and these check-ins that happen in the clinical setting, we have program seminars that are outside of the clinical environment. We have didactic and simulation-based sessions that focus on those elements that we were talking about with the 3 domains. So we have different topics that we go over in sessions in different modalities to really help build upon all those skills and experiences that you've already had. We provide team building sessions, reflective journaling, really partner up with that self-care that we're trying to encourage, and then we will have large cohort debrief sessions. At the culmination of the program, our nurse residents engage in an EBP project, so an evidence-based practice project. It's a literature appraisal. Each unit is partnered with a like unit or like specialty, and then they're assigned a topic, or they choose a topic that's aligned with that specialty area. So I'll give an example. One of our nurse residents here is from the neurology department. So we partner their group of nurse residents with the nurse residents who are in the neurosurgery department. So that way they work together and they do this literature appraisal, and it's the topic that they're doing is going to be impactful or resonate with them in their patient population. So they support research and provide a pathway to disseminate the work and impact practice. So we really try to align where our nurse residents are, pair them with a group that has the like patient population, and that way the work that they come out with is going to be impactful in some way to the practice that they provide. Okay, so here at Stanford, we're committed to growing and developing our clinical nurses from the moment they enter the nurse residency program throughout their prosperous career. So as much as we want to recruit great nurses that are motivated, we want to also keep you and grow you within our organization. So here is a list of opportunities or ways that you can develop professionally here at Stanford. We, of course, we're an academic medical center, so we promote education and continuing education. So we always have continuing education opportunities, whether it be certification classes, just getting into know a little patient population in more depth, or certification support. We are always supporting advanced degrees, so formal educational opportunities are available. You're able to participate in organization-wide committees, and specialty certification is something that's promoted here at the hospital. There's so much specialty units here that there's certifications that are in every department has a different specialty certification. So after you're here for some time and you've been there, it's promoted and supported that you get certified in that area. Clinical expert is another pathway that you can develop professionally. We have a lot of our clinical nurse specialists and APP or advanced practice providers that are here. So that's another way you can develop. We have transition to practice opportunities. So if you were to join the organization in the, I would say, med surg or the acute care level, there's transition to practice pathways throughout the hospital. We can go over that a little bit. There's a clinical ladder promotion. So, as you've been a nurse for quite some time, there are ways to get a promotion through a clinical ladder. And then we have a mentorship program. So after all of these opportunities, you're really not sure what you want to do or where you want to go in your career. There's also a group that would provide some mentorship. So having some coaching and having some discussions and really just talking about what you enjoy and what you don't and where you want to go to help you make those decisions or explore different opportunities to different pathways that you can go. Okay, so we're going to get a little bit more into the application process, or what we're trying to do here is getting ready for our application period to be opening. So these are some departments that have taken nurse residents previously. We are finalizing our list of units that are signing on for the cohort that is upcoming. But we do take nurse residents into the critical care area. We take nurse residents into the surgical and medicine AAU. If you're not familiar with what that term is, I know everybody knows what med-surg is, med-surg tele, all of those things. AAU is acuity adaptable. So what that means is the patients are admitted for the trauma service, and depending on their level of care in a normal medical or surgical department, if there's no tele, they would have to be transferred to a different unit to have telemetry monitoring. Here in our AAU departments, our patients stay with the specialty that they're admitted to, no matter the level of care. So meaning if you have somebody, keeping with the example of trauma, comes in for a trauma and is an acute care level of care, doesn't need telemetry, but then also their status changes and they may need a higher level of care, our nurses are able to provide up to intermediate level of care. So there's a lot of adapting and adjusting of the ratio that we can do. That way our patients are there for their primary diagnosis and cared for by those nurses with that specialty training. So that's a little bit about what AAU is here at Stanford. We take nurse residents into our oncology departments. We have adult emergency department has confirmed they're signing on to take nurse residents. We do have a possibility that we can maybe take, may have an opportunity to be taking nurse residents into the pediatric emergency department. So when the application period opens, it'll be listed there if that's an option in the application. We take nurse residents into our inpatient float pool, which our float pool for our nurse residents will be dispatched into the surgical medicine and oncology regions in the AAU region. So they are able to be trained in different areas during their orientation. That way, when they're off orientation, they will float throughout the hospital. Clinical trials, we've been taking nurse residents for quite some time in clinical trials. What our clinical trial nurses do, it's a patient-facing direct patient care position that care for patients undergoing clinical trials in all specialty areas. They don't conduct research. They're not in a lab. They are bedside nurses that have been trained to manage and know and respond to patients who are undergoing clinical trials. So just for an example, if there is somebody here with a hip surgery, but they are taking an experimental medication or they're on a medication trial, a clinical trials nurse will be dispatched to that department where they are housed, and they will provide care for the patient, and they have a lot of training and background with that clinical trial. And then when there is no need for the clinical trials during that nurse's shift, they will be dispatched to do supplemental staffing with the float pool nurses. So a little bit different of a role, but it's dynamic, and they're able to take care of patients wherever they need to be taken care of. And then they adapt and they adjust when the needs are different. Okay, so those are the areas that we've taken nurses, and we will know for sure when you open up that application if that pediatric emergency department is going to be an option. Okay, so we have some specialty training programs. So all nurse residents participate in the residency program. This program requires a full commitment. You're working your full-time commitment, as well as you have seminars and sessions with our nurse residency program. But depending on the specialty area that you are hired into, you may be participating in an additional program that supports your transition into practice. So currently, for those nurse residents who are hired into the ICU, ED, or oncology, they participate in additional training, which may consist of in-person classes, maybe some virtual classes, skill sessions, simulation, or maybe some just online modules. So for example, the critical care transition practice program consists of monthly classes, simulations, skill sessions, and 80 hours of online learning. So that's in addition to the nurse residency program. We share this because we want to provide the information here up front that you're way aware of the expectations. If you choose the defined specialty that are listed here, we want you to be prepared and feel supported in your growth and development, but we want to make sure that you're not surprised by any additional work that's being asked of you. Feedback that we received from our residents who have been in these tracks were not aware of additional workloads. So we want to share this information and be fully transparent so we can make an informed decision of the pathway that you choose to apply to. So here is an outline for the cohort 39, the application period, when it opens to the start date. So I'm going to take a minute to go over it. You can take a picture of this if needed, just to keep in mind these dates that are going to be upcoming. So our application for this cohort will be opening on April 3rd. It'll be open for 2 weeks until the 16th. And that way, after that, we have a time where we do an application cleanup. We make sure there's no duplicates. We make sure everything is fully and completely filled out. And then we have about 5 weeks of application screening. So what that means is our nurse residency program team and our partners here in the CEPD, that are NPDSs, help us out, and we read every cover letter, resume. We look through every transcript of every applicant, and we read all the application questions. At that time, we provide a score or a ranking for each applicant, and we put them in a queue, and then we begin to develop our panel interview. So that takes us about 3 weeks to go through that process and prepare and make all the panels, the timelines, how everybody's going to lay out. And then that'll be from the end of May to the middle of June, so June 16th. It's good for you to keep this in mind, because if you're going to apply in April, you want to know by when you're going to hear something, right? That's always somebody's question. So Somewhere in that end part of the panel interview preparation, we'll start to send out invites for interviews. We will be providing an interview prep session on June 6th, similar to this one here, but it'll be focusing on our interview process. Our interviews are behavioral style questions. So we'll go over some strategies and how to answer those questions and how to prepare for these interviews. So our panel interviews and unit level interviews will occur from June 19th to the 30th. So how this works is if you're invited to participate in a panel interview, you'll receive an invite, you'll follow a link, and you'll join a Zoom session. It'll be different regions. So if you're interviewing for the medicine region, managers from the medicine departments will be there with a panel. It'll be yourself or nurse residents, 4 to 5 nurse residents, and they'll all be asked the same questions with no time for questions or any open dialogue. If the managers feel that you're a good fit for their unit, they will invite you back for a unit level interview that will occur the following week. And at that time, you'll be able to have maybe a more one-on-one conversation. They'll ask you more in-depth questions, and there'll also be a time for you to ask questions as well. So paying special attention to this time period here of the panel and unit level interviews. If you're going to be out of town, if you're going to be not in the country, if you're going to have conflicting events, this is the only week that we do panel interviews and the only week that we do unit level interviews. So we have a really tight deadline from the end of interviews to the start date. So just keep in mind, if you're applying, there may be some adjustments that you're going to have to make to be able to attend these interviews. Final offers to HR will go at the end of June. And then with our 7 weeks for our HR partners to be making all these offers, getting everybody cleared. We do have a cutoff date for our California license. It's July 28th, 2023. License needs to be in hand. This isn't a date that you need to take your NCLEX by. This is the date that your license needs to be registered in the with the BRN. That way we can make sure you're going to be cleared to start for the cohort on August 21st. So again, just paying attention to these dates. We will have contact information and a time for Q&A at the end. Okay, so we're going to go over our program application process. So to go over our application requirements, since you're here, I know most of you have, about 3 of these already checked off. So to be able to apply to our program, you must be a graduate from an accredited nursing program, ADN, BSN, MSN. We do accept online programs, accredited online programs. And when I say you must be a graduate, meaning by the start date, you must have graduated and received your license. So if you're in nursing school now and you're just getting ready to graduate and getting these applications in, that's fine, as long as you meet all the other requirements and that cutoff date for your license. You can have no more than 6 months full-time experience as a registered nurse. If you're not really sure how that calculates down, we want to make sure that's no more than 6 months from when you start the program in August. So you would calculate what 40 hours would be times 4 weeks. Take that number times that times 6 months, and you'll come up with the number 960 hours. So if you worked more than full-time, or you worked full-time for more than 6 months, you wouldn't be able to apply because this is a nurse residency program. So that would be too much experience to be qualifying for this program. If you have more than 6 months, you'll be welcome to apply to any clinical nurse 2 position. If you could have a part-time position and you could have worked there for a little bit longer than 6 months, as long as those hours don't exceed the full-time number of hours by the time you would start this program. Official graduation transcripts can be no greater than 18 months from the cohort start date. So the cohort start date is 8/21/23. So your transcripts have a date greater than or older than February 21st, 22. So if you graduated more than a year ago, you wouldn't be able to qualify for this residency program. And then at the end of all of those requirements, you have submission of all required application documentation. So we're going to break that down in the next few slides. So required application documentation. So we ask for transcripts. You can provide official or unofficial as long as your full complete information is there listed. But we ask for a cover letter, resume, with the elements here listed. We want some education, list of your clinical rotations, faculty references, work, nursing, intern, externship, military or volunteer experience, all listed there. And then completion of an electronic application that includes questions. So let's go over what a resume would look like that's turned into our program. So a resume provides a summary of your experiences, abilities, skills, strengths, and accomplishment. It states relevant information regarding your education, experiences, and job-related interests. It demonstrates what you have done in the past, which should align with qualifications of the job you are seeking. Your resume is your personal marketing tool and allows you to effectively and clearly communicate assets to a potential employer. We get a lot of questions about what cover letters and resumes should look like, particularly like what their format is, how long they should be, what should and shouldn't go on it. So listed on this slide is what we'd like to see on a resume. So how you wish to display, your format is up to you, but everything listed here has to be on there for us to be able to review and rank your application. So areas to be scored on your application, of course, you're going to include your education experience. So you're going to include your education, level of education, the degree, school and date of program completion. You can include non-nursing degrees, school and date of program completion if it's applicable as well. For clinical rotations, you can include a nursing curriculum associated with each rotation, clinical location, and the number of hours of each rotation. You could put this in a table format or just list it in a list, that's fine. When we look at work and military experience, you're going to want to include your job and your role, or a branch of the military, and your role, your rank, your employer, time of employment, and your roles and responsibilities there. Volunteer experience, we take any volunteer experience. You're going to include the volunteer title or your role. Where did you volunteer? Who was your supervisor? Number of hours volunteered, which is really important. We really need the number of hours. If you don't include the number of hours, then we can't we can't appropriately rank your application for volunteer hours. And then you're going to include your roles and responsibilities. If you have any nursing intern or externships, you include your, if it was an intern or extern, you include your title, your agency, the role, and your supervisor, how much time you were there, again, your roles and responsibilities. And then references. So previously we had asked for letters of recommendation. It became a really big challenge for our applicants, knowing that our nurses or faculty that were writing these references were overstretched with COVID and everything else going on. So we've changed to just ask for a minimum of 2 references from School of Nursing faculty. So you list them there, you provide their contact information. Do still clear with the references that you are putting them down as a reference, because if they're called and they have no idea that they were listed as a reference, then they're not going to be able to provide a reference for you. So I have some bolded areas here. So just let's touch on some of those. So we have work experience, military experience, volunteer, nursing, intern, or externship. These areas are all areas of the resume that are scored. So you get points for having work or military experience, volunteer experience, nursing, intern, or extern, externships. So you really want to make sure that you fill out the entirety of these sections in your resume, so that way they can be, all of that can be reflected. The work experience section here, I would like you to think of your resume as an advertisement, right? So it advertises you and your unique skills, your qualifications, and stresses the benefits you have to offer. So we get a lot of questions about, should people include work experience that's not related to nursing? And we encourage you to still include those, because you may have customer service experience and you might think, well, that doesn't really have anything to do with nursing. Well, it does, because in customer service, you've taken a lot of skills of working with people, talking with people, having empathy for different situations. So, use that and kind of hone in on that and show how that can be related to a nursing position. You might have been in sales. How does that relate to working with people? All of the different skills and knowledge that you've gained in your work and other professional settings, you can definitely apply them here in your resume and use it to highlight you. Okay, so talking about a cover letter. So a cover letter introduces you to an employer through personalized explanations of your qualifications and interests in a position. So employers use cover letters to get a sense of who you are and how you would use your experiences to accomplish the requirements of a position. So, things that you can choose to share in your cover letter would be like why you chose nursing, what motivated you to choose this profession, what have you done to overcome or what have you overcame to get to this point in your nursing career? What makes you uniquely qualified for this role? So these are a culmination of experiences thus far. Again, talking about personal experiences, clinical rotations, education and training, work experience, you have volunteer or military experience. What of those experiences have given you the unique qualification to be a great clinical nurse? You can share something like that. You can share why Stanford, share why you're looking to work here at this organization, what you can offer, how your values are aligned with Stanford. You can also share what you plan to accomplish in the future. So like I said, we love to recruit great nurse residents, but we also want to keep you here, right? And grow you professionally and have you have your whole career here at Stanford. So you can share what you plan to accomplish in the future. So everyone at this point, when we have so many hundreds, I'd say I've read thousands of resumes and cover letters, and everyone's resume really starts to look the same. So take this opportunity to let your resume speak for your past experiences, and your cover letter can summarize your future goals. Let that shine, use those, what makes you unique, what experiences you have, how does that make you a more well-rounded applicant. The main purpose of a cover letter is to support the content of your resume. So your resume is going to focus on your qualifications and achievements, and your cover letter is going to expand on those achievements. So really showcasing your personality and explain why you'd be a good fit for the company. Okay, so we've gone over what you need to submit. We've gone over, you can use the qualifications. So what makes you qualified to be able to apply here, what you're going to be able to submit. So official or unofficial transcripts. You're going to have a resume, have a cover letter, give you some tips on what to write, how to start on that. And then we're going to get to that electronic application. So when you enter in the electronic application area, there's some demographic information or general questions that you're going to be asked. It's going to ask you, where did you hear about this position? Will you be willing to commit to a one-year program? Some yes and no type of questions. Then there will be a specialty ranking area. So the full roster currently is not final, but there are some previous areas listed here that you'll be able to rank. So depending on where you would prefer to work the most, it would be your number one choice, and then scaling down. Our goal is to place people in the first and second choice. We place them in that interview panel. But again, it's really depending on where your application is sitting. So then you get to the electronic application. So you're going to be required to answer 4 questions. Each question is going to have multiple components, and you're going to be required to answer all of the components to the questions. So the length of the answers is up to the applicant. We accept all answers regardless of their length. And we're going to go over the questions shortly. And we may have mentioned about the items that are scored on the application. And so those are, people can have a general opportunity to get some points in there within their resume and all the elements that are listed there. But for those who weren't able to participate in any extracurricular activities, or maybe they had other family or personal obligations, the next portion of this session is going to be important for you, because we're going to go over the application questions and how to answer them. And application questions can have a great impact on the scoring of your application. So I really don't want you to be discouraged if you haven't been able to participate and volunteer, if you haven't been able to have a job outside of work, if you weren't able to, kind of stamp down an intern or externship. These questions are equally as important, and even maybe more pivotal. They can position you in a better spot to get your first or second choice in your ranking. So let's look at some of these questions. So tell us about it. This is one of the questions. This is a question. Tell us about a time during your clinical rotation when you experienced a caring moment with a patient. how did this moment affect the patient's outcome and how has it changed your clinical practice? So like I said, there's multiple components to each question. So in this question, it's talking about a caring moment with the patient. The second part is how did this moment affect the patient's outcome and how has it changed your practice is the part 3. So you can use some of these examples. You sat with a concerned family member. The family felt relieved and calm after you sat with them. And then you would answer by stating what you learned from this experience or interaction. What do you do differently? Another example would be you washed and styled a patient's hair in anticipation of their family visiting. The patient felt verbalized feeling refreshed and beautiful and was smiling when their family visited. And then you can share the end would be like, what did this moment teach you about the human-human connection? A third example of an answer would be you made a patient laugh during a stressful time. The patient stated they haven't laughed hard in a long time and it felt so good. And so then you can share for the third part, how has your viewpoint shifted from patient-centered care to person-centered care? So depending on what this situation or story experience you want to share, it could be a simple scenario or story. And what really brings it home is the impact you had or the impact it had on you and the following. So we really want to focus in on these examples, and all components need to be answered, right? So they can be answered simple with one-liners that are listed here. And then the part 3, you can just answer, how has it changed it? Using that first example, you sat with a family member, they felt relieved. How has it changed your practice? I now make sure to sit with every family member who I come in contact with. Something so simple. Yes, you have answered all 3 components of the question, but what really is going to make an impact and make your answer successful is how you answer this third component. So, but with a one-liner, you met the requirement to answer all the components, but what is really going to hit hard and bring it home and have your answer be successful or make an impact is going to be here listed on the next slide. So we're going to go over all 4 questions and just some examples of how to formulate your response. So these are all 4 questions listed here. The first one is the one we just reviewed. 2, 3, and 4 are the other 3 questions you will receive. Feel free to take a look at these, take a picture of them, and review them. As you have time between now and when the application opens, you could be thinking about some scenarios or examples for your application, and you can refer to these questions and think of some experiences that you can use. So when looking at the prompts, you want to, piece out, we've highlighted here the third part of the question that you really want to emphasize on. So you look at these and you want to take time and ask yourself some questions, right? So all of these questions, again, 3 components, and you're going to be looking at how to answer them. So when you're looking at these questions, you're going to say, okay, what about this experience or scenario? What makes this memorable? What's going to make this a memorable story? How did I go above and beyond in this situation as a clinical nurse? Maybe this was an example from a previous employment. Maybe this was happened during school. What did you do that's memorable? How did you go above and beyond? How much reflection and learning occurred as a result of this experience? So did you just have this experience and then just go about your way, never thought about it again? Or did this experience or story have an impact on you and really impacted how you react to other situations? What was the lesson in action, right? So you really take from an experience. You're talking about one of the experiences that or the examples that we gave you previously is that you made a patient laugh. It's one thing to make a patient laugh. They say they haven't laughed in a long time, but how do you take that response further? So now knowing that laughter can go a long way, you don't realize that people are in the hospital for a long time and they don't have the simple interactions or simple person-to-person interactions. Now, how does that affect every other patient you're going to encounter? Really sharing those insights. Don't be shy, like we talked about earlier in resumes and cover letters about bragging. We really want you to highlight who you are and how things, how you're able to emphasize and use these experiences beyond nursing. Or maybe this was an experience that wasn't a nursing experience, but you've been able to use that and apply it to your practice as a nurse. And how has your journey to this point shaped you the way you think, act, and perform? So another question you can ask yourself is, are you showing that you have a growth mindset? Is that evident in your response? Because sometimes you might have somebody else read it and say, do you kind of get what I'm saying? This situation, this scenario was so impactful to me. Like it affected so many elements of my life. But do you really get that? And you have somebody else read it and they say, no, it just sounds like you're telling me what happened. You're telling a simple story. So really think of some ways that you can emphasize on how it was memorable. How did you go above and beyond? Did you reflect and learn from this? And how did that affect other elements of your life? How did you put this lesson into action? All of those elements. So when we talk about growth mindset, you can ask yourself, if you're not really familiar with that term, what is a growth mindset? So people who have a growth mindset believe even if they struggle in certain skills, their abilities aren't set in stone. So you may face adversity, but how do you embrace these challenges? How do you come out on the other end? What do you do? How do you plan? What's your strategy? Talk about things like that. How do you persist in the face of those setbacks? And how do you take that feedback and what do you do with it? That's really important because we don't expect perfection, right? Like as a new nurse in nursing school, we've all had challenges. No one, we've had nurse residents come through our program and they have come all different routes. Some have come straight directly from high school into nursing school, graduated super young. We've had people come other routes and, seeing all the different avenues and all the different walks of life that people have come really just make our program richer and make our our nursing population more diverse and rich. So we really want to hear those stories, and that way you're able to share that and it'll help us see how you're going to apply that to care for our patients. Okay, so we have some general frequently asked questions. We're going to go over those and then we're going to open it up to the group. So when we look at cover letter, how long and what format should cover letter be? It could be as long as you would like. I would keep it to 1 page. I think that's just easier to read, but if you have a lot to cover and you really want to share, go for it. Format could be in a simple letter. You could address it to nurse residency program. You could address it to Stanford Healthcare, to whom it may concern. You could address it to, just a general heading. I would make sure that you address it to Stanford. We have had some filter through that were to other organizations. Do we read every cover letter or do we use software application to scan for keywords? No, we read every letter, resume, all the application questions, and all the transcripts. So our team and our partners here at the Center for Education read through everything quite thoroughly. Should your cover letter target specific position or specialty that you're interested in? That's entirely up to you. You want to go for it and target. If ICU is your passion, you want to talk about that. That's you are more than welcome to. There are times where maybe if your application makes it into your second choice and that's not ICU, just ask yourself, would you be okay with the manager in another department reading that cover letter with that specific want in there? Should I share work experience, even if it's not healthcare related? I agree. If you can, if it's going to go with the theme of your cover letter and what you would like to share in that, and some of that experience has really shaped you into the person you are, and that's what you want to highlight in the cover letter, I would say go for it, as long as it aligns with what you're applying for. You can share your senior preceptorship experience, even if it wasn't in adult medicine, because you're learning either way. You're taking care of patients, you're interacting with family members, you're providing teaching, you're providing safe care. So all of those elements can be shared in a cover letter. Should I share why I think you would be an asset to your organization, or does this come off as bragging? No, we definitely want to hear it. This is the time that you would want to do that, right? Because you want to show what's going to have you stand out from other applicants. Some questions we get on resume is how long and what format is wanted. So for that, again, however long you want to put it in length. Format can be a simple Word document just with lists. We've seen some really beautiful resumes coming through. Looks like there's like software or maybe some services that provide it. They're all looked at the same. As long as they're legible, they're all welcome and accepted. You can format your clinical rotation information in a table or a chart, or you could just put it in a list, a double bulleted list maybe, just to make it clear, as long as it's legible. What if you're still completing clinical hours? You could just put in progress. Maybe you could put the amount of hours you've completed so far and put in progress. Just make it clear that you're still working on it. Extra points for attending certain nursing schools, GPAs or degrees. No, everybody is on an equal playing field with that. We don't give extra points for people having clinical rotations here at Stanford. You can definitely list those non-healthcare related work experiences, using the opportunity to list your roles and responsibilities of how it would relate to a nurse would be beneficial. All volunteer work is accepted, just making sure you hit all those elements of the amount of hours, where it was, the dates, the supervisor. What's considered an intern or externship. So nursing intern or externship is what we're looking for. You may have had a previous career or education pack in like veterinary science and you had an externship there. That would not count towards this application. We're looking for a nursing intern or externship. So it's paid or unpaid, and it would be for the role of a nurse. So just listing it there, making sure you hit all the elements that we're looking for. That way we can look into it if we needed to. You can provide your RN license information on your resume. It's not expected. There are people applying that are still in school, so they don't have the opportunity to provide that yet. You can include your ACLS or BLS. It's not a required element that we're asking for. And you can list other elements on your resume, such as certifications, skills, and accomplishments, but it's just providing a better sense of the things that you've completed for the managers that will be looking at your applications, but it's not required, and it doesn't put your resume into any other category, different category. We have some general application questions. So looking at, can you apply before you graduate? Definitely, as long as you are on track to get that license before, have the date here, 7/28. That would be the date you would need your California license in hand. And then choosing your specialty area. So you have a ranking. We will provide you with all the areas that are going to take nurse residence during the application process, and you will rank from your most desired as number 1 and go down the list to where you would least like to work. And we try to get you in that first or second category. What is the interview process like? So panel interviews. We have panel interviews, so it would be you log on to a Zoom. You'll be there met by a member of our residency program or our education team. They facilitate the interview, have a panel of managers there. Our team facilitates all the questions. There will be behavioral style. You're able to answer them. It takes about an hour in length to complete these panel interviews. And then after that, if you're fit for that unit, you'll get a call back for a unit level interview. And then that would be a little bit smaller of a panel, or maybe just a one-on-one with the more specific management team that called you back. And then from there, again, behavioral and more candidate specific questions will be on there. How many people are we looking to hire? We're looking to hire around 100 nurse residents. If you've applied before and was not selected, can you reapply again? Yes, you can reapply again. We welcome you as long as you still meet the criteria to qualify to apply. You can definitely try again. The more general program application questions. Can I choose only one specialty? No, it's a ranking system. So you choose which one in order of preference from number 1 down to however many. So if it's 6 or 7, that's what you would select. You cannot interview for more than one specialty. We have multiple interview panels occurring at the same time. There's no way to pluck somebody from one area and put them into another. So choose your ranking wisely, because that's where we're going to, depending on where you rank with your application, is where you'll be placed. We get a lot of questions if people can keep their other jobs, have other jobs. This is a full-time commitment. It's a lot of work outside, you have your clinical time, and then there's times where you have seminars and skills simulation. And if you're in another track, like our oncology, critical care, emergency, they have additional courses and classes as well. So keeping that in mind, this needs to be a priority. And we want you to have some balance in that work-life setting. So totally a personal decision, but I would recommend you evaluate what's the priority. Is it manageable to be enrolled in BSN Bridge program? We have had people who have come in and are already in the completion stages of their BSN Bridge program, and they've been successful. We've had people attempt to start one and had to take a pause on it. It's just what's going on in your life. How can you manage all of the demands? If you haven't already started one, I would say wait, come into the program, see how it is. how do you adjust, and then decide where you would like to start one. And if you're already starting one, if you're already in one when you're applying, just be prepared. There's going to be a lot of adjusting that you'll have to do to be able to complete everything. If you have vacations planned in the first month or two of the program, please be mindful. I know we're starting in August, maybe the end of summer vacations that might be occurring. This, again, is a full-time program. There's a lot of sessions that are required that go along with the residency program and also our other specialty tracks. So have some backup plans to be able to adjust for this. Vacation is granted by the discretion of the manager, and there needs to be accrued PTO already. So we would like to just have people start thinking about that, looking at those timelines. And if you already have something planned, you know, having keeping in mind when those interview dates and things are panning out when you get closer, those are definitely some things to think about. Okay, so we're getting towards the end, so we could open it up for everybody. So important application reminders. So we have a checklist here. So things that you want to get ready before the application opens. Keyword before the application opens. Have transcripts. So you can have your official or unofficial is fine, as long as your name is listed there and it all matches with your cover letter and your resume. Your resume, we're looking at having your educational information listed, your clinical hours, list of references, your experience listed with all the asked elements, so work, military, intern or extern, and volunteer experience listed. And then we're going to have the completion of the electronic application that includes the 4 questions. So things that you do not need to submit, it's not required to submit with the attachments. All of the listed here in the application checklist, the transcripts, cover letter, resume, can all be submitted in one big PDF file. You could just start it with your cover letter, put your resume, have your transcripts there, and submit it once. I actually recommend that. There's nothing worse than having to submit something and then it's not, and you submit 2 of the documents and then the 3rd one's failing and nothing's going through. So submitting it all under one file takes the less stress off of you. So it's only one thing you have to upload, answer the questions in there, and you submit it. You always want to leave a buffer for something to go wrong with some type of application system, right? So you don't need to include your RN license. You don't need to upload that. You don't need to upload any BLS or ACLS, no additional certifications or letter of recommendation. Have your list of references on your resume. We don't need letters of recommendation. When it comes time to apply only one time. So if you're concerned that an error occurred regarding your application, you email. This is for when you're applying and there's a problem with the application or you're not sure if something went through. newgradrn@stanfordhealthcare.org. State what the error is and wait, and they will respond what the next steps are. So you want to make sure that you give yourself enough time to have this waiting period. If you wait till the last day to start your application and submit it, by the time that the new grad RN email gets back to you, it may be too late to submit your application. So keep that in mind, always remembering not to wait till the last minute, and which is the next prompt there. Late applications are not accepted. So look at that schedule of that 2-week period of when the applications are open and plan out when you think you're going to apply. So then you know, okay, well, if I'm going to apply in the middle of those 2 weeks, then I need to make sure that my questions are done before here. March it out, figure out a plan to give yourself some leeway. That way, if there are any problems encountered, you have a backup plan and you're still able to submit on time. Use one identifier that remains consistent on all the documentation. So your resume, transcripts, and application information should all have one clear identifier. My name is Leticia Cortez. Sometimes I go by Letty. I answer my phone and I answer it to all my nicknames sometimes, but that's a little confusing when we're trying to read all these applications. We want to make sure that we're looking at the right application with all the right documentation. So you can give us a preferred name after the application goes through, but if your transcripts say Leticia, then all of your resume and cover letter should say that as well. And then when you get further in the application process, if you say, hey, I don't actually go by Leticia, I go by Letty, then we can definitely adapt and accommodate that, no problem. But just in the process, when you're trying to get your information through, we recommend using one identifier. And then you're going to answer all 4 application questions. Don't leave them blank. You want to be mindful to answer all the components of those questions. Okay, So we have some HR salary and relocation information. So base rate for our nurse residents for this August start date is $81.69 plus an hour plus your shift differential. So you'll be getting evening shift differentials of 10% on top of that base rate, night shift 18%, weekend shift is 5%. We do offer relocation assistance, $5,000 for gross out of area hires. Stanford rental housing programs are comprised of rental leases and apartments, condominiums and single family homes. Landed.com helps Stanford employees buy homes. As an employee here, you are eligible to start the date at the start of hire for accruing PTO. So you get 36 days in 1 year, including holidays, and you increase to 39 days in year 10. Our employees, you're provided with medical, dental, vision. So there's 3 plans in total. Tuition reimbursement, $2,000 a year can be used to pay back student loans, which is so helpful when everyone's just right out of school and they're like, well, I don't have any tuition to pursue. I actually really just need help paying off this loan. So we can use your $2,000 per year that could be used to pay back your student loans. Vaccination. So we're still, I know there's been some changes, but our health care employees are required to be vaccinated, boosted, and able to show proof of that. NCLEX cutoff date is the 28th of July of this year for our start date. That would be on August 21st. Okay, so now we're going to open it up to our Q&A session. So I'm going to stop my share. And I am going to have our nurse residents introduce themselves first, and then we'll open it up to some questions. So as you have questions, you can maybe just raise your hand in the little emoji, and then we'll call on you and we can get you to ask our residents their question. I think they are the most knowledgeable and the most helpful in this area. They have the best perspective and the perspective you want to hear, because to me, I'm like, everything's great. But to them, they'll tell you what they think, which I hope is still everything's great. So we'll start with, I think we had Jackie listed first. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jackie. I am part of Cohort 36, part of the residency program. So I'm actually wrapping up with the residency program at the end of this month. I am on L5, the neuro unit. Specifically, I care for stroke and epilepsy patients.
Thank you. And then Victoria, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Victoria. I work on G2P, the inpatient psychiatric unit, and I'm a part of Cohort 37. I primarily work with patients with mental health issues, so like bipolar, depression, schizophrenia, and I'm halfway through the program. I am at my 6-month mark.
Thank you. Okay, Shanae, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name is Shanae. I'm Cohort 36. I'm actually graduating in a couple weeks. I work on C2, the medical oncology unit. So we have basically patients that have history of cancer, but we also see just medicine in general.
Thank you, Shanae. Okay, so I'm going to call on the people who have their hand raised here in the top. We have Corey. Corey, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. My question is for the panel interview. I know you did mention that it will be via Zoom, and since I live nearby the Stanford, probably like 20 minutes away, will I have an option to do the interview in person, or it is strictly via Zoom?
Well, it's currently all our interview. Currently, though, the way the format is, it's a panel interview, so it would be difficult to have people in person and over Zoom. So currently, we're continuing the format of having them over Zoom.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Dan, do you have a question?
Yes, regarding the 7/28 cutoff date for getting your NCLEX, your license. I had heard that from one of our instructors that there's been a lot of delays at the state level with getting the testing dates out to students once they've graduated, like 6 to 8 weeks. So if we don't graduate until like end of May, that puts us past the start date or the cutoff date for that. Is there anything to do about that?
Well, I mean, Carly, can I tap on Carly, our HR partner here? She's works very closely with all of this. It's her favorite thing.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Sorry, I was answering a question in the chat about our bridge program. So I heard something about licensing requirements. What was?
So
Just-
I'm sorry, Dan had a question about they're hearing from school that there's a lot of delays with getting their license. So if they're graduating in May, they won't make the cutoff to get that license by our cutoff date.
None of our December graduates had that issue. We had a lot of our cohort residents that are starting here this month graduate in December and were able to get an NCLEX date into January and into February with their license turning around within about 48 hours. So they haven't seen that. For anyone though coming from out of state, highly, highly, highly recommend doing your NCLEX in your home state, then applying for your California temporary and permanent license. It is much quicker. If you're an out-of-state person trying to get your NCLEX here in California, that is very delayed and you will be kind of pushed back behind California residents.
Thanks, Carly. Okay, we have, I hope I get the name right. Amos?
Yes. Had a question. So is it possible, it sounds like your interviews are on Zoom. Can you do that while being out of the country?
The question would be, do you have a stable internet connection that you can connect to Zoom?
Okay. And if
Yeah.
so, that's a green light to go.
If you can log into that Zoom, we don't know where you are, right? Like, so.
Okay.
Everyone's Victoria, everyone's smiling. I'm like, where were you, Victoria, when you did your interview? Okay, we have Riley. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a quick question for the out-of-state students too. For those of us who take the NCLEX in our home state and then apply for a California temporary license, if we didn't have that by the required date, is there anything that Stanford can do so that we could still have a job with Stanford once our license gets through? Because it's kind of nerve-wracking to just full send and apply to a state when you're not sure if you'll have a job when you get there.
Buddy, I'll take this. Riley, for anyone that has those type of situation, reach out to me. Obviously, we can work on certain situations case by case basis, and we understand how nerve-wracking it can be coming from out of state with the possibility of relocating. So, yeah, I'll just leave it as case by case, but reach out to me directly so I can kind of track and get to know your story and your background so we can make sure that, you know, it's a smooth transition for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Caitlin, we have you listed here.
Hi, thank you so much for having this info session. My question is, in the past, have you guys had an operating room nurse residency program?
We've taken one set of nurse residents in the pre and post area. Currently, we don't have that offering. So that's where we're at right now with that.
I see, thank you.
Sunshine, what's your question?
Hi, thank you again for hosting this. It's nice to see you all. I just had a question about the resume portion. So I attend school in California and I did an externship on the East Coast. We had different working titles that didn't include intern or extern. So how would you prefer us to list it?
You can list it at what you could put, maybe, you know, you have work experience, you could put nursing, intern, or extern, and then under that, you would put what your title was with that, and then the agency you were at.
Okay, for sure. I just want to make sure that, like, you know, it's obvious and clear in what that is.
Yeah, you could differentiate it from work experience, list all your jobs, then you could put intern, extern, and then when you list that, your role will be there.
Oh, makes sense. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Maricel, is that how you say it?
That's perfect. Hi, everyone. My question is actually probably to the current nurse residents. I'm a single mom, and so for me, I'm concerned with the schedule, and I was just hoping from maybe your impression, is your schedule manageable once you did get into the program, or is it one of those you really don't know from day to day or week to week? So just hoping for some clarity on that.
I can answer that. I am actually a single mom. When I applied, I was a single mom. I'm still a single mom. But for my unit, I have to say they really do give you a heads up. And my manager really works with me and my schedule. So they normally post the schedule about 2 weeks out before the next one. And you get to kind of pick and choose with days. So they have self-scheduling, and that will go to your manager. And if they can work with that, they usually will work with you. So I find it really helpful. I haven't had too much trouble.
Thanks, Shanae. Yeah, you have windows, Maricel. You have windows of when the self-scheduling period will be open, right? So it's open for a certain amount of time, it closes, and then it'll open back up. So I'm sure if there's a conflict, Shanae, they come to you and say, hey, this day you asked for off, just knowing your management team. We have great managers here at the hospital. So, all right, Joseph, what's your question?
Hi, thank you. I just had a question on listing of like our preferences. Do we, like, if we were to list something as our second option, does that put us lower priority as someone else that listed as their first option, or vice versa? Like, would it affect our eligibility in a certain area or specialty?
It goes by a ranking, right? So depending on where you're the higher score you are, if that we go by what's the most, I would say, sought after, the most impacted specialty, which is usually ICU. So ICU will go, okay, we'll start from the top. Who in the top score wanted ICU? Then we put them there. So there's not necessarily everybody who has a higher score or the highest scores want ICU. Maybe they want oncology. So then they go to oncology. And then we just move down the list and we fill the panels that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like, so do we, because I just got a position in a high acuity unit, and like versus cardiothoracic versus ICU, would it be like, if they would, in our panel interviews, or would we be able to get 2 separate interviews if they were both interested in the applicant, or only one?
You mean from the panel interview? No, you would go to one unit level interview. So that's where your resume cover letter probably would play in. Maybe the managers will see that and say that, hey, they have more experience here. Can I take this person? There's a lot of work with who will be the better fit. So, you can only interview for one panel, and then your unit level, we send you to, they select who they're going to take back. So that's how that works.
All right, thanks.
No problem. Paola, can I answer your question? Or we have one for the nurse resident.
Hi, thank you. Hi, thank you for having this. I just have a question because I just asked about the NICU area, and I was sent the link for the Stanford Children's Hospital. By the time I do the application, is it a different process for the Children's Hospital, or is it the same application and I just list that I will prefer NICU?
So we're 2 separate hospitals. So Stanford Children's is everything with the mother baby. I think that's what they call maternal child health, though, that area, and pediatrics. Our end, we only have adult medicine. There may be an opportunity for pediatric ED. We're still waiting on confirmation for that, but we don't house children here in our hospital.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank
Separate
you.
process. No problem. Khan, do you have a question?
Yes. Hello. So my question is for the nurse applicants. I was just wondering, what are some things you wish you had known before you had entered the new grad program, and what kind of qualities you think an applicant should have so that they can succeed in both the actual program and the interview application process?
I can start off by answering those questions. Well, first off, I think coming into the program, I had background experience as a nursing assistant also at Stanford. So I was already aware with the organization, the patient population. So my transition to a new resident nurse wasn't too rough, I would say. It was very smooth. But one thing I was still, I guess, worried about was, of course, I'm a new nurse, my experience from nursing school versus starting my new career. So I think what helped me succeed in the program so far is what Letty mentioned a lot during this webinar, is self-care. I think that's really important, to just really prioritize outside of work, because even though we do work 3 days out of the whole week, those 3 days can be super exhausting. And so truly a work-life balance has worked best for me. And I try to do things that I like outside of work. So when I come in for my shifts, I feel refreshed and ready to go.
Thank you, Jackie. Okay, Hillary, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for putting in the time and effort to prepare all this. My question is, this is towards the new grad panel. What kind of characteristics would you consider or looking for when you were choosing your references at the time of your application?
So I chose like preceptors that I worked well with, like in terms of like I felt comfortable to ask them questions and you have a good working dynamic with, like someone who saw you grow and someone who can like speak to your character, not only like in a hospital setting with the patient, but how you work with like a team dynamic. Someone who you're comfortable being vulnerable with so they can speak to your character.
Thank you, Victoria. All right, Corey, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do have one more question in here, and this is more for the interview question. So just a little background in here, like prior pursuing nursing, I was working in finance, banking, and their interview process is like my interview first with the HR, where they screening me, and then if they find it suitable, then they have me interview again with the hiring department. So in here, I was wondering that if you guys will do the same, like, are we going to interview first with the HR where they're going to screen us first, and then if we're qualified, they will transfer us to the hiring manager and have the interview right there.
So your application is the screening, is that screening. So that's why you put that cover letter, the resume, and those application questions, and then you're given the opportunity to select a preferred area. So you rank your preferred area. So depending on where you feel more passionate or where you have more experience, you select where you most likely to work, and then you go down the list of what other areas are hiring. So that's how you're placed into the panel interview.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it looks like Randolph.
Hi, Leticia and Myra. Nice to meet you. And thank you guys for putting all this together. So my question is, I graduated with an associate's at the end of 2020, started working at an outpatient clinic 2021, and the start of 2022 in per diem PACU nurse at an ambulatory surgery center until now. So I'm getting my BSN May 2023, so pretty soon. So my question is, should I still apply to this program, or what other options would be best for me?
You can, I want to say, and maybe you can email our line too, just so we can make sure that we're screening you properly, but you can use I'd have to see, because I have to see exactly how your experience rolls out and if we're using how much work experience you have, and then when your graduation for your BSN. So we'd have to look at that. So you can email us. Maybe I'll send you our email in the chat, and then we can look at you a little bit more closely, because everybody's a little different. I don't want to put a broad statement out there, but we'd want to make sure that you still qualify as a nurse resident. And if not, we have other options too within the hospital.
Oh, okay, awesome. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
no problem. And then we have Anmol Singh.
Yes, hi, thank you. My question is regarding like I'm an international student. So once I moved here, I didn't have my social. So I don't have much volunteer experience, because I could not even volunteer without a social, because all hospitals require a background check. And even the same goes for work experience too. Does that affect like your applications? Because I only worked a little bit on my OPT for 6 months, and that too was at a veterinarian clinic. Like, and I noticed like in the webinar you mentioned, like the work experience is highlighted on the resume section. So I was just wondering, like, does that affect on if you get hired or not? Because I had like a certain situation and I couldn't work. do?
No, we give, there's certain areas, if you have any job experience, you get credit on your application. That doesn't affect if you haven't had that, and that's where I highlighted, then you really want to pay attention to those application questions because they can still change the trajectory of your application. I know some people get a little bit discouraged when they haven't been able to do an intern or externship, they haven't been able to volunteer, they've only been able to work. And it's not healthcare related, it's, their previous job. That's all fine. So really take the time to answer those questions the best you can so that you really are successful in that area. And that can still make up for points that you were not able to have. But any job experience is job experience. Now, did you have a question about being an international student? I didn't
Yes,
get that part
also,
clearly.
I already asked Carly about this.
Oh,
If
okay.
the visa is required, but like I know like this program requires a year of commitment. But I was wondering, on the application page, it says the visa, sorry, 1 second, I'm just, a work visa sponsorship is not available for this position, but I do have OPD, but it will expire in December. So I was wondering, like with that, like have any effect or not?
I think I would have to refer to Carly on this one. I'll give her a minute. I'm not too sure. Maybe that may be an offline conversation.
That would be an offline conversation. If you want to ping me in the chat, and then we can kind of have a private conversation in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Viola, do you have a question?
Hi, thanks again for doing this webinar. I'm also an international student, and I am a fourth-year student from the Philippines, and I'm like gonna take my license here on November. And so I still plan on joining the cohorts maybe next year. So I just want to clarify if like there are additional requirements for international students like me aside from the CA license, which I plan to take early on next year. Thank you.
I'm pausing for Carly. I hope you should answer.
Yeah. Send me a private message on the chat and we'll talk since everyone's situation is different.
Thanks, Carly.
Yep.
Okay, and then we have Mara.
Hi, thank you for holding this session. So my question is, what is the schedule like for the new grad program? Is it like a 3 days a week, 36-hour situation? And then also, when are the hours? Is it like 7 to 7 or 8 to 8? How does that look?
I'll let the residents on the line answer that one.
Oh, so you do start off with 3 days a week, 12 hours, and we have a morning shift, which is from about 6:45 in the morning to around 7:15 in the afternoon. And then you have the evening shift that is like about 6:45 to 7:15 in the evening. So just 2 shifts, 3 days a week. So that's from the very beginning. Well, there's about 2 weeks where you onboard, and then after that, you're on the floor with your preceptor.
Okay, and then oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, how do the first 2 weeks look? Because I know some other programs, they have like a 9 to 5 pretty much schedule for the first few weeks. So I just want to know if that's similar.
Actually, I don't know if it was 12 hours. There was, we had a couple I believe we had a few seminars in the beginning, those first few weeks, and they were just hour days.
Yeah, it was mostly the onboarding, doing online training modules in that sense. Then we did have like an official orientation Zoom webinar for like a full day, I think.
And then since Mara asked, do you guys want to share how your shifts or weeks go when you have seminar?
Oh yeah, so we do have seminar once a month. We meet either on Zoom or in person for 8 hours for the day. And then during those weeks, we would get paid for those seminars. So then we would just have to work 2 12s and then an additional 4-hour shift on the floor for the week that we do have seminar.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Andrew, do you have a question?
Hi, yes, I do. My question is regarding the resume, clinical experience portion. Do you recommend we put all of the different places we had our clinicals in? And should we list some of the skills that we did there?
You don't have to put the skills, I think just the where your clinical rotation, how many hours, what hospital and department. How did our residents put their clinical rotations? How did you guys format that on your resume?
So I listed the hospitals and the amount of hours that I did at the hospital and the specialty. And so I listed it according to the unit that I worked at last, and then like from fourth semester to first semester.
Yeah, I did the same.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Giovanni?
Yes. So I'm a senior nursing student. I've been doing research for the past 2 years, specifically with a nursing-led research team out of Texas. I saw that you guys talked about EBP being part of the residency. My question is for both nursing residents and nurses on your floor, what opportunities are there for continuing research and being part of research, more specifically in neuro?
Oh, Jackie, I think this one's for you. He's more specifically in neuro. They're currently, I think, let's see, Shanae and Jackie are finishing up their EBP project, and Victoria's about to start hers. So do you see any other research going on, or any opportunities within your units?
I know there are smaller committees in my unit regarding quality care or in regards to research. I am personally not a part of that, but I know that within my unit, there are small committees that participate in quality care and research. I just don't know the specific projects that's going on right now.
Yeah. And Giovanni, we have what we call, it's like other places call it shared governance, but we call it shared leadership. Today is actually shared leadership day. So everybody, they participate in councils, and one of the councils there is research, right? Research Committee Council. I think that's the way they name it. So they look at how to integrate research into our care, how the bedside nurse can participate in that. There are multiple ways that you can incorporate. I think there's like CELT projects you can be a part of. Christy, who's on the call, participated in that. So it's organization wide. So after you get your footing and you're here in the nurse residency program, there are multiple avenues that, depending on what type of research and at what level, right? So there's a lot of opportunities here because we're academic institutions. So we are really trying to encourage everybody to get in there.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
And then Chloe, we have about 6 minutes, so we're going to try to get to everybody. So Chloe, do you have a question?
Hello. My question is regarding internal applicants. So I'm actually a nursing assistant at Stanford, and what my managers have told me is that you have to select something on the application that indicates that you're an internal applicant, but is it a different process, or is it just like a button I have to click once I'm submitting all my forms and everything?
Hey, Chloe, I could answer that. Since I was also an internal applicant, I believe there's a separate link that we'd be able to apply under, but the format of the application is the same.
Thanks, Jackie.
I'm loving this right now. Okay, so Benjamin, do we have a question?
Yes, my question is for both faculty and then also residency faculty regarding the assistance with moving and home situations when you get into the program. Did any of the residents use this when moving? I have a family. I know Shanae said she's a single mom. So I'm just wondering how easy that transition was to try and move from somewhere else towards there, if anybody used that or has assisted new grads with doing so.
Well, no, I actually only live like an hour away, so I didn't have to move, luckily.
And then I think Jackie is close by. Victoria, I think, was close by. I love that Shanae said, I live only an hour away.
Only an hour, just an
Only
hour.
an hour. True Bay Area person right there. Carly, do you have just any information for Benjamin about the relocation?
Our relocation is for those that live 120 miles outside of Palo Alto. It's a $5,000 sign-on that you get paid out in lump sum on your second paycheck.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Karen.
Hello. Thank you guys so much. I just had a question for the nurse residents. You know, coming on as kind of the new person, I was just wondering, since you're all in specialty areas that probably require more of a commitment or longer term commitment in a sense, I'm wondering how well supported you felt on your units, and also what the nurse to patient ratio was like for you. How was that transition in helping you feel confident to be able to take on your work?
I can just say that I was honestly shocked at how supportive my unit is, how supportive management is, how supportive my preceptor is. When I first started, I was honestly scared to death, but everyone's really open. You have any questions, they're there. I mean, I couldn't go from one end of the hallway to the other without like 4 nurses asking me if I needed any help. So you can relax. You're in good hands. I can honestly say that.
And I agree with what Shanae says.
Yeah, and just always be open to asking questions and, feeling comfortable that you don't know the answer, and you'll eventually find the answer. People will always come and, offer a hand.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks, Karen. All right, we're down. Riley, like, what is this timing? Perfect.
Awesome. I had 2 questions, but I want everyone else to ask first. This is a faculty-based question. As far as the different committees at Stanford, like the ethics committee and the quality improvement committee, what opportunities are there to be on those once you're a nurse and out of residency?
There's many opportunities. I think that would actually be it depends on the unit. There's so much movement and there's so much growth within our hospital. Like our bedside nurses, they participate in so many things, but then they also move around to different areas. They go into different transition programs. So there's always openings. It just depends on where in your unit. But after you, that's like a unit-based committee, but it's hard to say. It's not like once you're here and you got your footing and you're settled, you're off orientation, because I wouldn't recommend participating in anything until you're off orientation. It's endless. Jackie, Victoria, and Shanae, do you have any experience with that? Have you already been pinged to join a committee? I think you probably are.
Well, on my unit, I guess, I don't know if you'd call it a committee, but everyone has to sign up for some like kind of champion. So me and the other 2 new grads on my unit, we're like the fall champions. So we'll keep up with those kind of scores, and we'll update the other nurses on the floor about how our falls are going, and we'll like check in on patients to make sure they have like their socks on and their bed alarm is on. So those kind of things. Yeah.
And then I can add on my unit for neuro. Since I am reaching the 1-year mark, our management team is highly encouraging us to get stroke certified. So that's something that is presented to the whole unit, get more certifications for, I don't know, just to grow in your personal career. And then also management has already reached out to my cohort about the possibility of, once you're at your 2-year mark, if you're interested in being a preceptor for the residency program. So management is really good with being proactive and checking in with you in that sense.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Same for us. I'll be starting my chemo certification in a couple months. So we're always growing.
That's awesome. I love to hear that, right? And that's the thing with nursing, you never stop learning, but the opportunities are always presenting themselves. So it's a tricky question to answer, Riley, but also look at, like, you have 2 different answers, right? So it's really just seeking out the opportunities and being vocal and just stating your interest. We are at 1:30. So I know for time, if anybody needs to log off. I'll answer these last two questions for Janae and Victoria. And then I'll have to conclude, but if you can make it quick, we can answer it. If not, we could take the question offline. Is that Gian?
Oh, sorry, it's Gian.
Gian.
Hi, everyone. My question is, as a Stanford Children's employee, are we also considered as internal applicants when applying for the adult program? And then if we are, or if the internal application link available to those previously employed?
I think I have to have Carly answer that question. I don't believe Packard employees are not considered internal, correct?
Correct. You are considered an external employee, but your seniority does carry over in terms of like your retirement benefits and such.
Got it. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Okay, Victoria, last question.
Hi, this is for the current residents. I just wanted to know what were y'all's what is your favorite part about working at Stanford right now?
Oh my gosh, look at you, Victoria. I'm glad I took this. We're gonna have all three of you answer. Go for it.
Okay, I'll start. I feel like my favorite part about working at Stanford is, since it's a teaching hospital, everyone is always learning. There's always new ways to do things, and I feel really supported. I feel like if I want to move all the way up, or continue my education, which is big for me because I'm working on my BSN, I always feel supported because education is very important at Stanford. I'd say that's my favorite.
I would say my favorite is the support and the close-knit connections and relationships I've built so far with my coworkers, and just having multiple opportunities of growth. And we do have a lot of resources to utilize as well.
I'm going to sound redundant, but it's the same thing. It's just the opportunities to grow, the new grad program, connecting with people who are in the same boat. There's a lot of debriefing, so you can talk about the clinical experiences you have. Everyone's really honest about their experiences. And it's unique in that everyone really is there to learn, and you can tell that they're very passionate about their patients. And the nursing philosophy too, it's centered on patient care, in a way where it's, individual care, and you embrace people from different backgrounds and diversity. And you see that in the population and also in the staff. So it's a very inclusive space.
Cool. Well, on that, Victoria, perfect question for the last one to take. Yeah. I want to thank Carly for working so hard in that chat. She's answering everybody's questions. Thank you so much. Victoria, Jackie, and Shanae, we thank you so much. We're so proud of you guys, and love that you guys are here to represent the program. Thank you everybody for attending. We hope we answered your questions. We'll be posting this on YouTube in the next 24 hours. We hope to see your applications. Again, we're hosting the interview prep webinar. I just booked the date, so I don't want to be. Did I say June 7th? I think it's 6/7. It's a Tuesday. So definitely join us there. We'll go over how to prepare for an interview. So we wish you the best of luck in all of your endeavors. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.